Hi, this is Dr. Jim Guilkey coming to you from the Learningverse podcast. I want to talk a little bit today about the fact that subject matter experts, SMEs, are not designers, and how we can actually accelerate sales through a new innovative instructional design technique. I like to start these out with some statistics. According to Forbes magazine, 55% of salespeople lack basic sales skills. 58% of buyers report that sales reps are, quote, unable to answer their questions effectively. And according to another recent survey, 64% of all sales training is lost after 90 days. And those two, I think, are the areas we need to focus on, right? 55% of salespeople lack basic sales skills, and 64% of all sales training is lost after 90 days. What is that? What is the problem? I'll give you a great example. Before I started S4 NetQuest, I was the assistant director of flight education at Ohio State University. So I got to train pilots both in the aircraft and in the classroom. One of my favorite classes that I taught at Ohio State was the flight instructor course. So this is teaching people how to teach. Now what was interesting is, in this class, the participants in the class, they all have a lot of time. They are commercially rated, they have a lot of experience, they have a lot of flight time. So how I would start off the class is I would ask, who in this class thinks they're really good at landings, as an example? And half the class would raise their hand, if not everybody. Oh, I know how to land, I'm really good at landing. Great. Then come up here and teach us how to do a great landing. Now, what do you think these, quote, subject matter experts did? They just started talking about landing. Well, now remember, when you're on final, watch this crosswind because that's going to throw you off, et cetera, et cetera. So there was no structure to it. There was no instructional design to it. So they didn't go from simple to complex, et cetera. And why is that? Because they're subject matter experts. Now, don't get me wrong. Subject matter experts are absolutely critical to creating, highly effective learning solutions. Probably as important as the instructional designer. The difference is they play completely different roles. The subject matter experts know the content better than anybody else. They know what's important. They know what's hard to learn, what's easy to learn, etc. But again, what the subject matter experts don't know is instructional design. To give you a quick example, the part of the brain that's activated during a learning task is called the hippocampus. And basically that has to be stimulated in the brain, which means more oxygen and glucose for better learning and, most importantly, associated recall. So what it comes down to is, how do we affect that? How do we design training so that we are, in fact, stimulating that hippocampus? Well, I can tell you this much. Traditional training, which is what a subject matter expert would use, is not going to do that. When I say traditional training, what I mean is things like this. It's content-based. It's normally a singular event. It's trainer-focused. You've all been in courses like this. What do I mean by trainer-focused? They're standing in front of the class, they're lecturing, and everything they're saying is on a PowerPoint slide behind them. And at the end of the course, you're going to get all their PowerPoint slides, which you're never going to look at again and will probably gather dust on your office shelf. And the real problem with traditional training, which is what an SME is going to utilize because they don't know instructional design, is at best, it results in memorization of facts. Not stimulating the hippocampus, which means it's not effective, which means they can't recall it, all the stuff we just talked about. So what's the alternative? The alternative is what we use at S4 NetQuest. It's called impact learning. It's problem-based, not content-based. It's a continuous learning flow, not a singular event. And it's learner-focused, not trainer-focused. Put the impetus on the learner. Put the responsibility on the learner. Allow them to collaborate. So, think about it this way. Rather than just giving them content, give them a problem to solve. Give them the content needed to solve it. Allow them to collaborate. And that's going to result in the ability to apply the knowledge, not simply spit it back on a multiple choice test. So that's how we're going to effectively use instructional design to have a much more effective learning solution. Now let's talk specifically about how traditional sales training is done from a higher level, from an architecture level. And and most of you or many of you have experienced this, I'm sure. There's pre-work. Could be a module, self-paced module. That's normally a page turner. And again, at the end of that, you either check a box that says you did it or you complete a test. Again, memorization. Classroom, we just talked about it. It's traditional. It's lecture, it's memorization. You may do a couple of scenario-based things in the classroom, but again, not highly effective. So the result of that is I'm about to go into the field as a new sales associate, and my actual learning is going to be a trial and error type situation in the field. And that's not going to be a good situation. It can result in a lot of unpleasant results. So I bounce around in the field, trial and error. What could occur if that's this traditional approach that a subject matter expert is going to design? And if most of the learning is going to occur in the field, problems with that are: one, turnover. If I'm not successful when I enter the field, I might quit my job or go somewhere else. Lost sales, of course, which means lost revenue. Frustration, and especially in areas such as if you're selling a medical device, healthcare, etc., you can damage a relationship. Physicians, they don't have a lot of time and they don't have a lot of patience. And so if a sales rep goes in and there's no value there, they don't have knowledge, you damage the relationship, and your ability to get back in and talk to that particular physician, surgeon, whatever it might be, is damaged. Even once you get better in the field, which could take a year, 6 months, you've damaged the relationship. So instead of that traditional page turner, lecture, bounce around in the field, our impact learning methodology is going to take the knowledge of the subject matter experts, people that are really good in the field, but we're going to use the impact learning methodology to take all that content and all that experience and make it a highly effective learning solution. Yes, you're going to do pre-work, but that's going to be application-based, highly interactive, have them apply it. The classroom is the same way. For instance, we can get a group of folks together. Let's use the medical example again. And we're going to approach a physician about a particular prescription drug, and we have to overcome objections. That's the problem. Give them the content to overcome that. What would that be? Could be data, statistics, side effects, any of the things we're going to need to overcome those objections. Let them collaborate as a team to come up with a presentation to overcome those objections. That is putting the impetus on the learner. That's not on the trainer. The trainer is simply facilitating these exercises. And when they present back out on how to overcome an objection, what's the rest of the class do? Sit there and just watch them? No, give them a tool to evaluate that presentation. Again, problem-based, application, etc. Now, before they go in the field, and they're already better than they were in the traditional model, structured field experiences, not just a ride-along, not just I sit with Jane, who is very experienced in sales, and hope that learning occurs. Structure it. What I mean by that is, again, put the impetus on the learner and make it simple to complex. The first thing could be as simple as look at the pre-sales preparation form and evaluate that. And then it gets more and more complex where you're actually looking at how the sales presentation was done, etc. Now, once you get in the field, you're not going to bounce around. It's not going to be trial and error. What's going to happen in the field, because of this impact learning methodology, you're going to become proficient and expert in a much, much shorter period of time. Just a quick example to show you that it isn't just philosophical what I'm talking about. We had sales associates selling catheter products, heart catheterization, imaging and ablation, that type of thing. And it was taking them almost 12 months, 1 full year, before they could actually sell the product. And because they were heavily reliant upon the field experience, the trial and error, they could only do a class of about 25 at a time. We implemented impact learning, that new methodology I just described. We got the training down to 6 months, cut it in half, and we could train 50 at a time. And the result of that was market penetration. They had the best product, didn't have enough people in the field. So again, subject matter experts are not designers. But again, I'm not saying they're not important. They are absolutely critical. But those of you that expect the head of sales that was great at sales to also design the sales training, you're going to end up with a traditional model, and it's not going to be a highly effective solution, which means, as we discussed earlier, lots of issues with trial and error in the field.